Hi, I'm Jason Nichols, and I'm on the left.
And I'm Vince Coglianese, and I'm on the right. And if we can't find common ground in this world today,
then we're all just travelers.
Passing each other in an international airport.
In this great American experiment,
we'll be relegated to the trash bin of history.
So let's come together.
To debate without yelling. And let's save this nation.
Experienced reporter and host of Rob Schmitt Tonight on Newsmax, Rob Schmitt, next on Vince and Jason Save the Nation. Vince and Jason Save the Nation is brought to you by Goldco.
I have a warning for you. Inflation, tax hikes, they're Biden's only way out of our over $30 trillion federal debt. So if you have $50,000 or more in your IRA, 401k, or savings, your money, it's at risk. So learn how you can protect it with physical gold and silver. Just call 855-948-1605 to get your free gold IRA kit. That's right. Just call 855-948-1605. And my friends at Goldco will give you up to $15,000 or more in free silver with a qualified account. You know, Goldco has helped thousands of Americans protect their retirement against inflation and tax hikes. So what are you waiting for? Just call 855-948-1605 now. It's a busy news week. We've got a busy newsman with us. Who's joining us today here, Jason Nichols?
Hey, we got my good friend, Rob Schmitt, a guy who I've known for a long time. I've seen the guy come up from 4 a.m. in the morning to actually having a primetime show, and he's actually a smart guy. He's not just a Ken doll there. I hated on the guy for a long time. I was like, God, let me tell you something. Let me tell you a quick Rob Schmitt story. Actually, I have a couple of Rob Schmitt stories, but my first Rob Schmitt story was the last time I was on his show. We're talking about, I think, abortion rights or something like that. And in the middle, literally, I wasn't feeling well that day, but I was like, I'm home. It's not a big deal. I don't have to go anywhere. All of a sudden, I just start sweating. And then, bam, I test the next day, COVID. like I was, and my mind was going everywhere. I was like, why am I sweating in the middle of this hit? You know what I mean?
That's how tough of a questioner Rob is. You were sweating. It was under interrogation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Rob, obviously today is a day where the nation is grieving, and we're talking a lot about a lot of issues and what could have prevented what happened in Uvalde, Texas. I wanted to kind of get your kind of first reaction and what your thoughts are on what happened there.
You look at this and it does keep happening. And the middle ground on this subject, where I think most Americans, where you get the widest swath of Americans, is that it's clearly a problem. When Democrats say other nations don't face problems like this, they're right. The issue is how do you resolve it, and what exactly is the problem? And it's not every single time, but it's the vast majority of times you have exactly what we have here. You have a very strange, maybe bullied, but a loner kid that just couldn't figure it out, that fell through whatever cracks of society, that just felt like he was isolated. He was all alone. He hated his life. He was angry. He was probably mistreated to some extent by people in his life, perhaps by his family. I don't know at this point, but certainly by his peers. You have somebody that 2 days ago, most of us would have felt compassion for and would have felt sorry for. If I would have met a kid like that who is always isolated, that feels like he has nobody, who's just weird, I generally, towards that person, go out of my way to be nicer. I think there's a lot of bad people in the country that see that person and just pick on him. I think most of us have a compassion for that person. And then they do something like this that's just horrific. And now the whole world hates him. And everybody is disgusted by him. We have to figure out what the problem is with these people. We have to figure out what went wrong, and we have to figure out how to identify these people before they can do something like this. Everybody's screaming about gun control right now, and that's exactly what you're going to get, and that's why situations like this are so politically useful for the left, and I do think they take full advantage of that. The problem with screaming gun control is that in reality, what they want to do is disarm the entire country, take every gun away. They don't want common sense gun regulation. They just want to take all the guns, because that's the only way it would work. Look at big blue cities where you have very, very strict gun control laws and you have gun violence ad nauseum. I mean, it's everywhere. There's gun violence. I live in New York City. You cannot get a gun here if you try. Try to get a gun in New York City. It's impossible. But we have gun violence all the time. There are guns everywhere. So it's a nuanced solution to this. And obviously there needs to be, it bothers me that this kid was able to just legally walk in and buy these guns, which is what I'm hearing it reported is what happened. That bothers me. That troubles me. I do think you need to find a solution to that. I think we need to have, I think people need to, it's so bizarre to me that you always hear people say after these shootings that it just seems like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense because he was that kind of guy. I don't know how we as a society learn to figure that out, but it's like, everybody in their life, has somebody, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people have somebody in their life where you just kind of like, there's something not right with him. And it's, and a lot of times it's just not till it's too late. And something like this happens.
It strikes me that, you're right. The gun conversation is the one that people go to instantly because there are partisan interests involved. But there's a cultural rot underneath so much of the rise that we're seeing, especially in the violent crime across the country. So yes, we're seeing a rise in school shootings. We're watching as last year, even in a condensed school year, you had more school shootings that reached some of those record levels, including this year. It's already on record pace. But that goes in line with the fact that we're seeing rises in homicide and on all sorts of violent crimes in cities across the country. And I can't help but think that this is connected to, ultimately, in some way, the COVID lockdowns, that sort of the whatever cultural rot we had in the first place accelerated dramatically when people were sent to their homes to live basically in solitary confinement and then to be raised, in the case of our children, by the internet and their smartphones. Something very desperate and disconnected has happened. And I think we're seeing some of the consequences of it. Can we draw a straight line directly to the 18-year-old who shot up at Uvalde elementary school yesterday? No, not yet, certainly. But you look at even the Buffalo shooter in that manifesto that he put together, he claimed that all that time that he spent away from school being radicalized on the internet made him the person he became today. It feels like if we want to have an adult conversation, maybe we should look at the cultural fabric that's being destroyed.
Right, Vince, you make so many good points in that statement, and that's exactly right. We and the cultural rot that you're talking about has been happening for years. It was happening before COVID. COVID exacerbated the hell out of it because we all just turned into screen staring little, hermits that live inside their apartments or their homes. Our social ability, our ability to have social lives and to go out. I mean, I personally, I felt like for up until maybe a few months ago, I could feel how much, I was way more depressed, way less happy than I was pre-2020. I felt like my whole life just went, yeah. It was just, you could just feel it. Like I felt like nothing was right. The city that I live in was just terrible. Everything was closing down. People were not, everybody left. I was living in this kind of shell of a city. All of my friends were gone. They were somewhere else. It was just, everything just was terrible. And I think that was happening to every single person in the country, with the exception of some people who maybe moved to Miami and found, COVID to be the greatest thing that ever happened to them. The Florida types that are just happier than, happy as hell to be somewhere else and to be somewhere where it was just warm and nice. A lot of New Yorkers went there and they brag about it. But I think that cultural rot, the screens, the fact that we all live on computers and phones and text messages, we live in this alternate world where you almost have like an avatar online that you live through. Your real person is not nearly as important as it was. I think all of that contributes to it. And then you throw all these kids on remote learning where they're sitting in their bedroom on a computer, and it's terrible. And I think we have a mental health crisis in this country. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with saying that, because I think you see it everywhere. I think you see a ton of depression. We're seeing a ton of anxiety. We're animals at the end of the day. We've been evolving for millions of years. We're not meant to just sit and stare at screens. We're supposed to go out and struggle a little bit. We're supposed to go out and survive. We're supposed to be out in nature. We're supposed to be doing all these things that we're not doing. And I think that is breaking something inside of us. Just a personal thing. I know it's a podcast, so I can just BS with you guys for a long time, but I found this cold therapy that I've been doing that, you see it on the internet. You see these guys jumping into the ice plunges and stuff like that. And the mentality of that, the logic there, I completely bought into after I tried it a couple times. They're like, we're not meant to be this coddle. We're not supposed to just sit on desks or in chairs at desks and just type and live and have food delivered to our door and sit and stare at TVs. We're supposed to go out into the world, and we're supposed to do things that are tough and challenging. We're supposed to go through things that are really hard and scary. I just the other day, I jumped into the ocean. It was 50 degrees in the ocean. It was 60 degrees outside. I mean, it shocks your whole core. I mean, it's hard. I mean, you hyperventilate. I mean, for the first minute, you can't even breathe. But when you get out of there, you feel this wash over you, and it's just all of this good feeling endorphins, and it changes the whole rest of your day. I think that's a big part of what's wrong with us, is that we're not experiencing anything like that. We're getting up and push the coffee button, coffee, sit at my desk, type, phone, TV, go back to bed.
It's
that
a
ain't no way to
malaise.
live.
Yeah.
That's not the way
Jason,
we're supposed to live.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question of you, Jason Nichols?
Absolutely.
Because you teach
I'm the star of the show.
You teach undergraduates, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you have some exposure to young people in the classroom. I talk to teachers at the younger level, like the high school level, and they say that the lockdowns changed the students kind of dramatically. That when they came back, their behaviors were different, their work habits were different because the boundaries were gone. It's not the same. Things have changed. Did you notice anything that changed in the undergraduate level in terms of the types of students you were teaching before the lockdowns and what they were like afterwards?
So that's a complicated question. Obviously, I don't deal with behavior the way that a lot of high school and middle school teachers would deal with. I feel like even though they're 18, I 18, 19, 20, sometimes 30, I deal with adults. So it's a little bit different.
Sure.
I think one of the things that has been, a barrier, and honestly, it's made me really think about my career and my career trajectory. I remember actually having a meeting, and, I'll just say it. I had a meeting with, not with Suzanne, who is Amy over there at Fox. And we had a meeting, and she was like, would you ever leave the classroom and just do media? And I was like, no. You know what I mean? I was like, I love what I do. I love teaching. I'm never letting this go. But when I come into a classroom and I see a bunch of students with masks on, you know what I mean? And we're not able to build the relationships. That was so much a part of my job that I absolutely adored, was having these relationships with students and being able to mentor them and write recommendations and call people on their behalf and try to get them further in their careers and in their lives. And to have them come back to me when they're, 25, 30 and telling me, how I affected them and how I helped them out. One kid who's like, yo, I was, working at the grocery store, but you wrote a recommendation for me and I couldn't find anyone else to do that. And now I'm graduating from law school. Like that kind of stuff, those kinds of relationships post-COVID aren't there anymore. You know what I mean? I don't know the students. I don't know them. I know a bunch of masks in front of my face. And I think one of the ways that it changed their behaviors, and now you're going to get me into complaining, but one of the things that changed is like just showing up. And I tell my students every semester, 90% of life is just showing up. So show up to class, and that's going to help you in the long run. And there are some students who still refuse to show up. They think it's like the University of Phoenix. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, you go to the University of Maryland. You don't go to the University of Phoenix. And I will say this, though. Rob also outed himself real quick about, not like that, but outed himself about William, is it William Hoff? The guy?
Wim Hof, yeah.
So you've been looking at the internet too, because I watched his videos too. And, I just got out of a cold shower before we got on. I'm not diving into Chesapeake Bay or something like that, where it's like 40 degrees. So I'll leave that to you.
Let me tell you, Jason, let me chime in real quick. I'll tell you one thing, that the cold shower is harder than getting into the plunge.
Really?
Cold shower to me is torture. Yeah, when you've got the little water just dumping all over you in different ways, hitting different parts of your body, if you just submerge, a lot of the gyms now are putting in these cold plunges. They're about 50 to 55 degrees. It's got to be south of 55 to have an impact. But, I started seeing my friends. One of my buddies is a news anchor in Philly, and he started doing it. He bought the chest that he puts outside on his deck, and it keeps the water cold. And he gets in it every day for about 5 to 10 minutes. And he's like, it changed my life. It's like, there's something about that punch. I mean, when you just get knocked by something every day that you have to get through, it's like, it gives you something the same way you feel when you get out of that cold shower. I mean, it works in many different ways, but
wait, so does it like afford you like perspective or something? I mean, is it basically like remind you of your humanity? What is it that you think you derive from it?
I think I don't know how it works, to be honest with you. All I know is that you get in and you learn how to control and manage your breathing. I do think that, I think something as simple as taking 10 deep breaths a day as somebody that's managed anxiety his whole life, 10 deep breaths a day can be tremendously helpful. When you do that, you do about 100 deep breaths in about 45 seconds, and then you numb, right? You get in, and it's torture for 45 seconds to a minute, and then you numb out, and then you're getting all sorts of circulatory benefits. You're getting inflammation benefits, muscle stuff like that, and you're getting mental benefits as well. It does tremendous work for the brain. And I'm telling you, you get out of there when you do it. On the days you do it, it's just like going to the gym and having a great workout or anything else that you do. You're swimming after that. You're just in a better place. It helps. It works.
Yeah, I think for me, it was also like, I hate cold water. So it was like facing my first fear. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So for me, I get up in the morning, I do burpees. I usually do about somewhere 100, 150 burpees. And then I get into the cold water. And, for a while, like I'm not even gonna front. Like I would stare at the cold water for a while, before I got in, because I was like, this is gonna be uncomfortable. But it's also just like I faced my first challenge of the day. I brutalized my body, number one, and then because those burpees never get easy. And then I got into that cold shower, and I know I hate cold water. And also, I watch all those Navy SEAL training things where those guys swim in like 50-degree water. So
we're
some of it
to go through this stuff.
Absolutely. I think it is. I think you're absolutely correct that not only are there health benefits, which, some of them are debatable, because I've seen some, researchers who say there's really no benefit to it. I guess it depends, but certainly it teaches you how to breathe a little bit, because your first thing when you get into like cold water is, that's your first reaction. But once you start realizing, you start relaxing a little bit and you learn how to breathe in cold water, it actually helps you to breathe deeply, in general.
And then you'll start, and I'm sure you noticed this, Jason, you start to seek it out. Like, I mean, you dreaded it for the longest time. Now I look forward to it because I'm thinking how good I'm going to feel 5 minutes from now. When I saw the ocean, I was like, I got to get in that thing. And I was like, how cold? I checked the surf depth on my phone. I was like 52. I was like, I'm getting in right now. You just do it. And you just know at the end of that, the whole rest of your day is going to be better. So it's a no-brainer. It's like 5 minutes of hell for a better day. I'll do that. It's no question.
It's wild.
Yeah. Where'd you get in? You're not swimming in like the East River, like you're, like your Cosmo.
No, I was out on Long Island, just jumping in the ocean. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
That's wild.
I heard in the friggin' East River.
I heard Joe Rogan tell a story once. He said that there's a huge difference between the Gatorade you just buy off the shelf and the Gatorade you drink after you're done the hike up the mountain. It's like when you finally get to the summit, you earn the Gatorade. It's a very different experience, completely different. So it's definitely, that's the jumping from the pool into the hot tub and back again. It's that kind of range of feeling. It does make you feel alive.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Absolutely.
Totally. All right. Well, this is getting useful already. I'm gonna have to try one of these cold baths.
Yeah, no, it's really, it also, I will tell you, taking a cold shower or a cold bath in the summer is very different than taking one in the winter. Cold means different things. And I remember seeing this one guy who lived in Florida. He was like, and then he moved to Montana, and he's like, a cold shower are two different things in Florida versus in Montana. So just keep that in mind. You may be like, oh, I take
your tap water. Your tap water is about 60 in the summer, and it's going to be about 50 or 48 in the winter. That's a big 10 degrees. It's a big 10 degrees. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's wild. Rob, tell us about Newsmax. What's it like getting all these former Fox people back together on the same network? We saw this week that Greta Van Susteren's joined the ranks there alongside you guys.
Yep, Greta's in. She was, I think, her last. She's at something called Gray TV right now, which I think just owns a bunch of local affiliates. Before that, I think she was MS for a year, and then before that at Fox. So she's been all around the block, kind of like me. I've worked for ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox. I've been all over the place too. It's a place that's growing like nothing I've ever seen. We were just out last night having drinks after the show. We had the big 4-hour election stuff last night, and we were just talking about how much it's grown. I mean, if you look back 2-3 years ago. I mean, we had about 1/10 as many employees as we do now. I mean, that's how rapidly we've grown. Greta's coming in. She's going to be doing the 6 o'clock show. We're getting ready to re-rack a lot of our our early evening and primetime shows, which we're going to be making announcements here coming up really very, very shortly. But obviously, Spicer's show's changing. Greta's going at 6 o'clock. That's publicly known now. So it's good. You know, we got Bowling came in. He was a great kid. Greg Kelly was one of our first big shows that we had at 7 o'clock. So it's a good environment. I mean, it's crazy to be with something and watch it grow. When I was at Fox, I came into this just massive corporation where it just felt like you could get lost in it. I mean, you walk down the hall and you're tripping over producers. There's a million people that work there. To go to Newsmax and to see, I mean, the first show I did, I remember my first day at Newsmax. This is how crazy it is. I came in, I did all the BSHR stuff, and then they come in my office, they're like, hey, can you do Greg Kelly tomorrow night? Greg Kelly is the biggest show we have. And I'm thinking to myself, like, can you imagine going to work at Fox News on day one and be like, hey, can you do Tucker tomorrow night? I mean, it would just never happen in a million years. And I look at it, I'm like, you want me to do your biggest show on the second day? I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's roll. So it was a place where you just come in and you get this chance. And then I think after everything that happened in 2020 election, Fox called Arizona early, and then we just got just put our names on the map. And from there, it just grew and grew. And then, we've come down from the highs that we had, right in those few months after when everybody was really mad at Fox, we blew up, but we've stabilized from there. But now I think we're on track to start growing again, and we're making the right moves and adjustments and stuff. But watching something grow like that and having access to your CEO, having access to your management, it kind of feels like a family, and it's going to grow out of that. And it kind of already in a way is, as we get, we got like 300 people working in our New York office now. So it's pretty big now, or maybe 200, but it's a very fun experience to watch us kind of figure it out. Because, we're trying to figure it out like everybody else. It's a new network. We're trying to get it. I mean, when I started my show a year and a half ago, the show before me was a rerun of Sean Spicer. We didn't even have a live show at 9 p.m. I'm at 10 p.m. So we had a rerun going before me. So that's how new we are to the game.
Yeah, it seems like it's got to be different to be on the ground floor of like the plank holder at the beginning of a network, really, in terms of its power. Because like, think about Fox. Like, there's a crew of guys at Fox who were there at the very beginning, and many of whom are still there. I mean, you've got like, Fox and Friends guys like, Brian and Steve from the very beginning, Hannity, of course, from the very beginning, Neil Cavuto from the very beginning. Yeah. And so you've got these people who really, they've gone to distance, and their relationship with the network's got to be very different than a lot of the people who came much later. And I imagine that you're probably looking around and going, okay, this is cool. I'm on the ground level of something that's on an upward trajectory, and I'd like to be here for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is very cool. I mean, I wasn't on the ground floor. I came in after they had already gotten their feet planted a bit, but I'm definitely, there's people that have been there for 5 years. John Bachman was like one of the first people they hired. I think there's probably like 5 or 10 people in the broadcast division. Obviously, we've got supplements, and we've got a magazine. We've got all these other ways of making money. But in the broadcast division, I remember at Fox, I was the last person that Roger Ailes hired at Fox. I came in, I was hired, and then about 6 weeks later, I started. And between my hiring and my first day, they fired Roger Ailes. And then I came in, and Bill Shine was the other guy that hired me. Bill Shine was like the number 2 over there. And then about, when I came in on my first day, Bill Shine was under the gun, and and he was fighting for his job. And they told me my first week at Fox, the whole first week, every single day, they told me I came in at 9 a.m. to meet up with the big management people. And they just said, go home and come back tomorrow. We'll figure it out tomorrow. The whole first week I just sat on my couch.
That was a crazy time.
That was the chaos at Fox.
I was at the Republican convention, and we were around everybody at Fox, and boy, that was like one of the cagiest times ever. It was just like, what the hell is going on? Like people were kind of on lockdown inside the Fox News impromptu green room that they had there.
Yeah. It was a wild, very interesting time.
It is really interesting to watch Newsmax grow. And shout out to John Bachman, who is another guy I like. But I think there's a reputation at large about Newsmax that they are an extreme far right network. And I think of people like you and Bachman, and maybe a few others, even Spicer. And again, you guys are the people that I know probably best, other than some of the reporters like Kilmeny and a few others. I think of you all as pretty moderate, conservatives. Do you think that the reputation of Newsmax is earned, or do you think that it is a little unfair and there is ideological diversity there? Because I don't know if you have any, any liberals there or anything like that, but do you think that it's a little unfair to think of you as being far right?
I have a warning for you. Inflation, tax hikes, they're Biden's only way out of our over $30 trillion federal debt. So if you have $50,000 or more in your IRA, 401k, or savings, your money, it's at risk. So learn how you can protect it with physical gold and silver. Just call 855-948-1605 to get your free gold IRA kit. That's right. Just call 855-948-1605. And my friends at Goldco will give you up to $15,000 or more in free silver with a qualified account. Goldco has helped thousands of Americans protect their retirement against inflation and tax hikes. So what are you waiting for? Just call 855-948-1605 now.
We've got liberals. We've got liberals behind the scenes. We've got liberals on camera. I'm not going to name names. I'll never do that. I would say that it's not a deserve. I don't think you can take one phrase like, oh, we're far right or we're moderate, and you can't pin it on the whole company. We have an array of talent all through. I mean, if you look at it show by show by show, you will see different. I am not nearly as far to the right as some of my co-hosts, but it just depends on the issues, right? There's some issues that I am as right as you can be on, and then there's some issues that I'm not, and I'm not going to get into which ones are which. But if you watch my show enough, you're going to figure it out. We just hired Greta Van Susteren. Greta Van Susteren is a big time independent. I mean, her politics are very nuanced. I mean, you're going to hear things. She'll say things. And some nights, you're going to find Greta probably agrees with a lot of people on MSNBC. Other nights, he's going to be right there with Tucker Carlson. Everybody has. The problem with a two-party system is that we all just get stamped and labeled and put into one side or the other. And then just like with Newsmax, it's like you can't do that to a network. You can't. I mean, look at Fox, for example. You've got Cavuto and you've got Hannity, and they're 5 hours apart. I mean, how different are their politics? Their politics are completely different. And then you've got other people that are even more liberal than Cavuto on during the day at different times. So you really can't brand something like that. And of course, people are going to do it. But
there's also the problem of critics, like bipartisan critics won't even watch or consume or read the content that they're criticizing. And then they'll caricature it. Then they'll be like, well, that's what they believe in. And they'll just literally invent something without actually knowing what the content is. And I can say that with some authenticity, given that we are at the Daily Caller. I can't tell you the number of times I've been like, oh, you see some ridiculous attack. And I'm like, you have no idea what we're doing here. You have no idea that Jason Nichols and I have the conversation we have on a weekly basis. Right. You're not paying any attention.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. And then the other thing they'll take one person's statement from a show on your network, and they will just lay it over the entire network. Oh, that must be the entire network position, which is, it's not even close to true in any case.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. No, I absolutely agree with that. Now, I wanted to ask you really quickly about what we saw in Georgia last night. We saw Brad Raffensperger and, of course, Brian Kemp win basically by landslide. And, former President Trump went out and really spent a lot of time in Georgia, trying to make sure that, he could get his people in there. I think, you can kind of put Herschel Walker in a different category, but, with Purdue losing so resoundingly, and then Raffensperger also beating Jody Heiss. What do you think that says about the Republican Party and about President Trump's grip on it? And do you think that maybe this is just Georgia and other states are different? Or do you think that maybe Republicans are thinking more independent of President Trump in 2022?
I think what you're seeing is that, obviously what Trump says goes a long way and is always going to go a long way in that party. That's never going to change. I think with Georgia, it was trickier because in Georgia, you have this governor that was very popular with the people, that did a lot of things that the people really loved. He is, at his core, he's a very conservative, he did a lot of things that Georgia Republicans are a big fan of. They do like Brian Kemp. Raffensperger was the one that surprised me more. I do think they tried to kind of do a mea culpa with a Georgia voting bill. That I think it pissed off MLB. And I'm trying to remember which controversy was which, but they kind of came back around and tried to fix the things that I think angered a lot of Republicans that they saw, and they got this bill, which of course they called Jim Crow and everything like that, which is ridiculous. You've seen voter turnout just explode in this election in Georgia. Just basically common sense election stuff. The same kind of things the Europeans do with voting. You need to have an ID. Any sophisticated country, you got to have an ID. You got to show who you are. We need to know who's voting in elections. Nothing wrong with that. I think the Kemp thing was, I think it was maybe that it's hard to figure, but Kemp resoundingly won that election. I mean, it was not even close. I do think Perdue, from what I've heard, and I can't verify this, myself, but from what I've heard, Perdue is not a hard fighter. He's not a guy he's not a strong campaigner. He doesn't do the work. He doesn't get on the ground. He doesn't want to talk to the people. He doesn't know how to raise money. He just might have been the wrong guy for it. I mean, he lost his Senate seat to a fairly far left guy in the state of Georgia. So he wasn't coming off. I think in his eyes, somebody said, I think Kristen Tate said last night on my show, that in the eyes of Georgia voters, they look at him right now as a loser because he just lost that seat, So it's like maybe he wasn't the right guy to put up against Kemp. Maybe they needed somebody stronger. So I think but I do think when you see a number like I think 73% is what Kemp got, I don't think it would have mattered who they threw up. I mean, it would have had to have been the perfect candidate to take him down. I think Kemp is very popular for a number of other reasons. I think Republicans think that he screwed up on the election, that they went soft on the election, that they let Democrats push them around. They let the Zuckerberg boxes and all these other things happen. And that bothered Republicans, but I think they gave him a pass on that because he's done other things right. Raffensperger is the one that surprised me the most. I thought he was toast. I thought Heiss was going to slide in and pull that one off. And that one, I'm honestly still trying to figure out, just like you. But it's funny because you look at other states and Trump puts the stamp on it and it's done. I do think that Trump still has a struggle with the suburban Republican vote, the moderate Republican vote. I think the best thing personally that's happened is that he's been off of Twitter for a while, because I think the Twitter, and I mean, you talk to the people that are closest to Donald Trump and they'll say that the Twitter is obviously the Achilles heel, right? I mean, it's like people, it's overexposure, it's too much. But I think that the way to win back for him to make the run again is going to be, tempering down a little bit of the noise, which I will say, I think a lot of the noise on Donald Trump comes from the press. I think every single day the press tries to make everything but a huge controversy, which creates all the noise that drove everybody nuts for 4 years. Mm-hmm. I think him himself, he says stuff but I don't think that it doesn't have to be taken to a 10 every day. And that's the media. The media says, oh my God, he said this. Oh, he said this. And now I think we're living in a country where people are saying, oh, wow, for 4 years, we had a controversy every day that was basically created by a very anxious press. Now we have a president that's giving us actual problems. I mean, we got a whole hell of a lot of problems and we're creating new ones, it seems like, every single day. And I think a lot of Americans are saying, wow, the real problems are much different than media manufactured problems.
I think the way to think about Trump, one of the ways is to talk about the media, of course, and the way the media really desperately wants him to be a cult leader. They want to create this caricature that anything he does, right, that he's got all these loyal supporters who will only do whatever he wants. And I think the race right now to look at that's instructive on this question is in Pennsylvania, where they still have not come out with a primary winner in that Republican Senate race. Trump endorses Dr. Oz, and you get McCormick and Barnett. And it turns out, like, among these guys, all of the people who still support Trump or certainly did in the past, they've split up their vote. They've liked people for different reasons. They find some ideological coherence with a different candidate. So yes, I think the Trump endorsement, Trump himself does play a role. It helps to influence people. I'm sure Oz benefited from that. And the reason this race is even neck and neck is because of that support. But at the same time, I think the media makes a mistake when they make assumptions about Trump supporters that just aren't true, that there are voters out there who are quite literally like assessing the ideologies and the extent to which they think these candidates will improve their lives.
So I think there's a couple of things we need to point out. Just to what Rob said, like about the Georgia law. Number one, I think people's big problem with that was that it makes it easier to overturn elections. That was the issue. The water thing and all that. That's what the press started to put out there. But I think people who really looked at the law were like, it makes it easier to overturn elections, which is anti-democratic. But I will say this about Pennsylvania. I think the problem is Trump started to endorse kind of un-Trumpy candidates. So Dr. Oz is seen as corporate. He's not like, he's a suit and tie kind of guy. And that's why I think even if he pulls this out, he's going to really struggle. Him and McCormick are going to struggle against John Fetterman, who seems like a man of the people. That whole, hoodie and the gym shorts, and he goes out into these working class communities. And by the way, the truth is that Fetterman is an upper middle class guy, always has been through most of his life. His father, I think, owned an insurance company or something like that. And he ran the business for a while, but he comes across that way. Whereas a lot of people are like, I don't trust Dr. Oz. He doesn't seem like a Pennsylvanian. He's somebody who's a suit and tie kind of guy. And I think, with Trump, who loves television, number one, we know, and Trump is actually, even though people saw him as kind of the man of the people, I think they're starting to see that, whereas it's different with J.D. Vance in Ohio. J.D. Vance comes across like a real authentic working class, Ohioan, doesn't matter that he's a Yale educated lawyer and an upper middle class guy who investment banker.
He comes across as concerned about the working class.
Yeah, I think he comes across as authentically working class too. Like he comes across like I am a man of this soil. You know what I mean? I'm the hillbilly elegy guy. And I think Dr. Oz doesn't have that. Dr. Oz, doctor is in his title. You know what I mean? I think it's a different kind of thing. And and I think that
I'd say,
go ahead.
Jason, I know what you're saying. I see exactly where you're going. I think with Oz, it was more, I think Trump in that situation wants to pick winners, right? I mean, and he's looking at it in a general election. And I don't know, I think that he thinks that star power of Oz, I know he likes celebrity. He's obviously done a lot of that kind of stuff. I think maybe he just thought that name recognition would carry in Pennsylvania. And I don't know that it wouldn't. I'm not sure. I see exactly what you mean as far as Oz. He feels he's obviously very, very rich. He's been on television forever. He's got all these things that don't connect the middle class voters and working class voters. But it is, I mean, it's what I want to know is, if you look at that race, if Trump didn't make a decision, and then you had obviously Barnett exploded when Newsmax actually had their big debate, and they had that debate, and right out of the gate, Barnett comes up. I think she was the first one to talk. And she just tells this story about how she was, it was right when all the pro-life stuff that leaked from the Supreme Court had just popped up. And here comes this, Black female Republican out that just says, listen, I would have been an abortion, but it didn't happen, and it's like, my mom wanted, my mom wanted to get rid of me. She kept me, I think was something along those storylines, but she was like, and she says, I'm here now. And I'm a couple steps away from becoming a United States Senator. That was a wild story. I mean, that's just a wild thing to hear. I don't care what your position on abortion is.
And I've met Kathy Barnett and spoken to her a couple times. I met her over at Fox years ago. Yeah. And I mean, she's a fiery person. And I think one of the things that I wrote that upset a lot of people, I wrote this in Newsweek, I think last week. I guess it was last week. And one of the things that I wrote was, people try to make it this cut and dry thing about Trump voters that they're racist. And there's definitely a racist and, nativist element in Trumpism. That's undeniable. But it's far more complicated than that, because Kathy Barnett, again, goes out into these areas in rural Pennsylvania. And if you understand Pennsylvania, there's Philadelphia and then it's Alabama. You know what I mean? It is literally, there's Philadelphia and the Philadelphia suburbs. And then even Pittsburgh, I always say Pittsburgh is just the biggest city in West Virginia. You know what I mean? Like it's a totally different kind of mentality, and I spend a lot of time in that corridor, in Western Maryland, West Virginia, and, like Waynesboro, Pennsylvania and all that. But those people are willing, they are much more based on their ideology and what they think is right, and that's why I think they can be reached if Democrats actually made the investment in those areas is that it's not quite as simple as Trump is our leader, Trump is our leader, Trump is our cult leader. We go with whatever Trump says. Or we only want white guys, white male candidates or white women who go with what we want. You can get someone like a Kathy Barnett who goes out into those areas, you know what I mean? And people will listen to what it is she has to say. I think that Democrats I think Obama for Democrats was a gift and a curse. Obama was like literally straight out of central casting as a candidate. I mean, he was handsome. He was, he was Black and he was multiracial and he was, it was all these things that, we on the left, thought was, just amazing. He was Harvard educated. But he was accursed because he was able to win with this new map. And other candidates don't have the strength. Obama was a once in a lifetime candidate. Other Democrats don't have the strength to win with that map generally. And so Democrats haven't invested in some of these other areas and tried to reach some of those other people that I think are actually persuadable and reachable. And people wonder I get all the time, why do you go on Fox? Why are you with the Daily Caller? Why do you go on Newsmax? And sometimes it's worse with Newsmax because they're like, Newsmax is really far. They're to the right of they're to the right of Fox. Either way, I get a lot of heat from that. And I will maintain that some of these people are persuadable. Like, you present them with a different, and I get the emails. Of course, I get the racist emails and other things, but I get the emails from people like, you gave me something to think about. Thank you. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That's cool.
So I think we need to have these conversations that Vince and I have and that you and I have had on your show. This time next time I'll try not to like break out into a flop sweat and like pass out afterward.
These are the most important conversations to have. I mean, if we can't talk to each other, if we just keep dividing, if we have two parties that are both running in opposite directions, we're toast. We are toast as a country. I mean, we can't just be breaking out into fist fights over politics. It can't be like that. We need to be able to be. And a lot of that damage was done during Trump when I think the media basically said, oh yeah, everybody that likes Donald Trump and believes in Donald Trump is the worst person you've ever seen in your life. And you just got this polarization that has now existed for 6-7 years. And it's very bad. And it has to stop. And it stops with people like you guys having this show. It stops when you have people, I mean, we show all the time people like Bill Maher that just have these moments where they're like, no, I'm not going to go along with what everybody says. I'm not going to just stay, dedicated left on every single issue, party over any kind of common sense. There needs to be people that break on both sides. There need to be Republicans that say sometimes, you know what, this is BS. They're right on this one. There needs to be people on the left that say, you know what, this is BS. They're right on this one. We got to start bringing it back together.
Yeah. What's the fun in just using somebody else's talking points? You have a brain, use the rest of it. Right. It's worth it.
Exactly.
Rob Schmitt, man, it is great to talk to you. Thank you for spending so much time with us. Really appreciate that, sir.
I loved it, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
That's Rob
try
Schmitt.
Try not to freeze in the East River next time you go swimming.
I ain't swimming in the East River, but if you jump in, I'll jump in. Maybe we'll do that next time.
There you go. You can really experience life then.
Yeah, I'll pass on that. But definitely, Rob, thank you for coming on the show. We've been wanting to have you for a long time, and we really appreciate it. Best of luck with whatever time slot they put you up on as a winner. And we'll definitely be tuning in to Rob Schmitt Tonight. You guys should tune in right now to Rob Schmitt Tonight, and also like and subscribe to what it is we're doing here by expanding the conversation left and right, issue by issue. We're going to keep going through it here on Vince and Jason Save the Nation. Peace.